All right, good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the latest session of the More Than Just Supplies discussion series, co-hosted by AHRMM's Young Professional Advisory Council, otherwise known as YPAC and Florida AHRMM. My name is Kevin Gork, Senior Enterprise Client Manager at Vizian Inc. and a member of the YPAC. I will be moderating today's session. All lines have been placed in a listen-only mode, but you can engage with the session in two ways. First, you may chat with fellow attendees throughout the session by utilizing the chat box that can be found at the lower right hand of the screen. We encourage all attendees to enter their titles and organizations into the chat for reference. Second, you can ask questions for the speakers by typing them in the Q&A box. The Q&A box can be opened at the bottom right side of the WebEx browser, clicking the ellipsis icon, the one with three dots, and clicking Q&A. After the session, please complete the presentation evaluation so AHRMM can improve the discussion series for you and other healthcare supply chain professionals. The YPAC is hosting quarterly discussions where a panel of supply chain leaders will engage in conversations on topics of interest within the healthcare supply chain. All are invited to join the conversation. In today's session, we will focus on executive presence in supply chain. We are thrilled to welcome today's panelists, Rosa Costanzo, SVP, Strategic Sourcing and Supply Chain Management, Chief Procurement Officer at Jackson Health, Keith Murphy, Chief Supply Chain Officer, UHealth Miami, and Ryan Cabarro, System VP, Procurement and Supply Chain Operations, City of Hope. Thank you for joining our panel today.
Welcome.
For today's discussion series, we'll start with a 30-minute panel session where participants will have a chance to hear feedback from the panelists. We will then move to an open panel discussion where we encourage each of you to ask panelists questions surrounding executive presence. We will now move into our panel discussion. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have for our panelists via the chat box or the question and answer. I'll kick us off with our first few questions. So group, I'd like to go around the room, starting with Rosa. And if you could tell us a little bit about your individual career paths and the different steps you have taken to get to your current positions in supply chain. Rosa, you're on mute.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here today. Let me just jump right in. I worked, one of the things that I'm very proud of is that I worked full-time and went to school full-time, after graduating high school. One of the things that I did was I started in environmental services at a hospital in Danbury, Connecticut. And I worked my way up in that organization as a section leader and supervisor. And while I was going to school full-time, at Western Connecticut State University in Connecticut, I graduated with my bachelor's, and at that point, I applied for a new position over in a hospital over in Putnam County, New York, which gave me a great opportunity with my career. I had a lot of professional growth at that hospital. I got involved in many non-clinical support service areas, not only the materials management area, but like transportation, purchasing, security, laundry and linen, nutrition services. But it was a lot of hard work, but very rewarding. One of the things that I do think is important to mention also is that during that time, and once I started over in Putnam, I really prioritized my professional development with industry associations like AHRMM. I attended a lot of the seminars and conferences. I thought that was critical, while at the same time starting to apply for my master's in healthcare administration. After, I don't want to say the number of years because, I'm very young, but after I think about 17 years or so is when I relocated down to Florida, where I am today. And I've had a tremendous opportunity there. I've had some professional growth getting me to where I am today in my current role. But, like I said, professional development involvement is key because, as you know, in our career paths in this industry, you get caught up being in your organization and just being the only person with your job in that facility other than your staff and obviously your team. So the different steps to grow is very important for your education.
Awesome. Ryan, would you like to share next?
Yeah, sure. Nice to virtually meet everyone. In terms of kind of where I came from, I'll start off with the accent that you hear is South African, not Australian, and so I've been here in the U.S. I came over to play soccer in college, and then from there I kind of finished up like Rosa. I was working full time as a college coach and doing my master's degree in healthcare administration as well. And from there, it was kind of one of those things where you look at different career fields, and I ended up in construction. And so in construction, I kind of worked, as a field manager in a national home building company, and from there I got into procurement and scheduling, and really started enjoying that part of the work, the procurement and the scheduling and optimizing, the things that go into building a home and bringing the cost of the house down. I kind of loved that sort of thing. And then went over to a GPO, sorry, Kevin, to Premier. I went over to Premier. I was with Premier for a number of years and started off as a sourcing specialist, and kind of got into working with performance groups, and then got to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, was a category manager, director of supply chain, kind of worked all different categories, all different things within the hospital. So I think for me, the different steps to get to where I am today was not being afraid to take on the categories that no one wanted to take on, right? Like you have physics and dosimetry, no one wants to touch that, or anesthesia, or physician preference items, or it's that willingness to kind of understand each of those different parts of the business, learn from it, and then be excited about it, and learn from each one and how it applies, and the principles from supply chain and sourcing and strategic sourcing and procurement, and understanding the business. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am now.
Awesome. Keith, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I took a little bit different path. I was when I got out of high school, I went to University of New Haven for a year. A semester, and at the end of that semester, at that time it wasn't for me, so I went into construction. And I was working in a construction company, worked my way up. Ended up starting my own company. We grew that. I ended up doing mid-size construction projects and office buildings, and did work for like shopping centers and large organizations like the VA hospital, and actually I did work for you guys may not remember this, but did work for the Kiss Rock group. So I did some pretty cool stuff, in that career there. But like Ryan, within that, right, I was bidding jobs and I was negotiating contracts and deals for myself. So, and I enjoyed that, right? And so then I had a chance to, and I was never home, and I was having, I had children, so I decided to go work for somebody else, and I sold the business. And I got into the telecom industry and started out as working in contracts and things like that, worked my way up there. Then, of course, the telecom industry became a mess back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I promised my wife that I was going to get a job at a university or a hospital, something that wasn't going to be sold, right? So I got the job at Yale New Haven Health, and that's where I started my healthcare career. So I worked there about 15 years, worked way up from contracts through, I became the leader of supply chain for the health system. Really enjoyed that job, but I hit kind of a ceiling. And so I decided to come down to the University of Miami, and I was happy that they, to be able to get this position here. And so now I work here at the University of Miami, and we have, grown the supply chain here. And I think the team has done an excellent job in getting us to where we are today. I would say that it has been an enjoyable ride. It has been an interesting ride, to come from different different um, organizations and different lines of business, right? And so somewhere in there, if you remember earlier, I said I did not I left college after my first semester. Well, when I went to work in the telecom industry, I went back to school. I got my degree. And like Rosa, I was working, full time while going to school. So that was an interesting few years there doing that. Bit of a challenge. So for those of you who are getting your education early in life, I would say stick to it, because it gets harder and harder once you have children and everything else. So, but that's been my road to where I am today. And I think it's been an enjoyable ride. It's been an interesting ride. And even though I got my education late in life, or later in life, I wouldn't have changed it for the world, because I think it was an interesting path. And you learn a lot from school, and you need that education. You need all of that, right? But you also need to learn from experience and the school of hard knocks. So
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Um, Both Rosa and Ryan, you both touched on taking on a task that other people didn't want to do, working in different departments, and really just not being afraid to, do whatever was asked of you to grow in your careers. I would say that's one key to the success that you guys outlined. For the three of you, are there any other things that you would consider keys to success in your career?
So I'll jump in. I would say one of the first things that I would say to people is, you know, do your job, but also do the job you want, right? In other words, don't wait for something, go after it, right? And Ryan mentioned he went after something that was tougher. I did the same thing. I went after the OR when I started in healthcare, right? The first 6 months I was doing non-clinical stuff, and I said, you know, copiers and pencils and everything was good, right? The organization needed done, but I really want to get into healthcare. So into the healthcare and the clinical side. So when our sourcing specialist left the organization, I actually asked to take on the OR and really learn that. So I think that's something we all should do. My point is you should go after what you need and don't be afraid of the hard work to get there.
Yeah, I guess I'll
Yeah.
jump in. I'll just add a couple things. I think I'm in line with what Keith has said. I think you have to be really courageous and brave. And I can go back from when I first started. I've only worked in hospitals since the age of 16, actually. But even when I first started, I always, I think I mentioned earlier that I worked in housekeeping or environmental services. That's where I started in healthcare. Even at that point, I took the jobs that nobody wanted, right? Whether if it was incinerating the regulated medical waste or cleaning the morgue or buffing the floors, these were jobs that were left for some of the older men in the department, things like that. And because I was wanting to earn money and make money, I was going to school and had to pay for my schooling and all. I think at that start, I started getting involved in things that were really outside the norm, right? So I mentioned that because I think it's important that when we talk about the keys to success in our careers, that we really think about what was a turning point for us. And I think that might have been for me in the sense that I wanted to just demonstrate the value and the commitment that I had to move forward and be someone that I could be counted on at the job. And that's what I've done during most of my career, is really just jumped in and made all of that possible. I think it's also framed me in my career in the sense that I do strongly believe that the janitor is as important as any executive or CEO. And it may be because I was a janitor at one point. I don't know, right? But the point is, I think it's key to success to really just jump in, be brave, take the jobs that nobody wants, prove yourself, and then that'll build your confidence and their confidence in you.
Yeah. And yeah, I think with both, Rosa and Keith, I think what we're talking about at the same time is like just not being afraid of hard work. Like hard work is just it's going to come with, it comes with the territory. And there's going to be long hours and there's going to be sacrifices, but you know, I think if you frame it in terms of like what you're getting from it, right? Like, and it's not just money. Like if you're working and you're not just getting the money from it, but you're getting an experience, you're getting an outlook, you're adding to, you know, everyone talks nowadays, you're adding to your resume, right? I think it's important because like it gives you perspective. Like, you know, the perspective of a janitor is different than the perspective of someone who's just sitting at a CEO that's never been a janitor before, right? So it gives you the ability to relate to people better. It gives you the ability to kind of get to be on the same level, to be able to have a conversation and talk about things, because this industry is built upon relationships and service. And right, and if you can ground yourself and be humble and know you're gonna have to work hard, and know you're gonna have to be in a service industry, and not be afraid to serve, then that will position you really, really well for a successful future.
That's awesome. Really good insight. So now on the other side, what are some of the hurdles you guys had to overcome in your careers to get where you are? Like you said, it hasn't been easy and there's been a lot of hard work. So it's not always a linear path upward, right? What are some of the things that challenge you guys across your career to, you know, get to your positions and where you are?
I'll start with that. I think one of the major hurdles, but this was very early on. You know, like I said, let's say the late 70s, early 80s, if you will. I found myself in what I thought at the time and believed was a male-dominated industry. So for me, it was a little different. You're going to hear different, obviously, from Keith, you know, and the rest. But I think that was one of the early hurdles that I came across. And what I did about that, because obviously back then I didn't, you know, have the credentials and the confidence that maybe I've developed with my years now. But that's where I decided that I needed to invest in myself, and really be able to have some credibility when I walked into the room or sat at the table for any discussions. And I made a commitment at that point to really go after my own professional development and continue getting my certifications and all of that. But I think that was the biggest hurdle I had early on. Obviously, the industry has changed today quite a bit, but back then it was a male-dominated industry. Again, in the years that I'm talking about, so that was probably the biggest hurdle I had in my career.
I would say for me is, and this was something I brought upon myself, I think. As an Irishman, I like to talk a lot. So I think sometimes you have to listen, really listen, right? And when you're in meetings, big group meetings, and I think we all know some people who talk for the sake of talking, right? And or repeat what they just heard and say it again, right? So I would say really listen and really hear what's going on, and then critically think about it. What's the next, the next thing coming down the pike? And so I would say I had to really learn how to listen and close my mouth sometimes and really listen and pay attention before I spoke. And that was early on in my career. And I was fortunate enough to have a really good leader who helped me understand that. So, so I think that's one thing you should really do is listen, learn, and really think critically of what's going on and what's the next step is, and not just jump in without some thought.
Yeah. And I think for me, some of the obstacles, I guess, would be, being from somewhere else, right? Not kind of having grown up in the US, I think would be, that overcoming that was, but I think also being able to establish credibility, right? And so, like, walking into the room and you're you're not a clinician, you're not a doctor, and you're sitting there and you're listening and you're trying to gather everything that you can, like Keith said, in terms of listening. I mean, those are those are just those skills that we have to develop. But being able to continue to persevere and to be able to learn from others, I think those are things that for me I was very conscious of. And it's like, look, I'm not the expert when it comes to cardiology or understanding radiology, right? But being able to really be willing to listen, willing to understand, asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions. I think I've seen some where folks, think they know the answer, and instead of just asking the question, they're going to go down this path of thinking they know the answer. So I think just asking the questions and not being afraid to what you think may be a silly question, just ask it anyway, and then learn from the responses that you get back. So, those are the things that I've kind of gone through with my career.
That's awesome. Keith, one thing you mentioned that you had a good leader who, talked to you about listening. For all of you, did you have a specific individual or individuals who influenced you, mentored you, or even sponsored you as a new theme throughout your careers, helping you get where you're going? Did you experience that, or was it all, just kind of claw your way to the top?
I was lucky to have two in my career. One was when I was in the telecom industry. When I started there, right? Like I said, I hadn't been back to school yet, and they took a chance on me, right? And so that was one of the first conversations we had, was about schooling and this and that. I knew I needed to do it, but I would say that's the first real mentor I had who helped me understand what I needed to do, where I needed to go to be successful. So I would say that one there was really important. He did an excellent job of, and he was nothing but, and he was also somebody from the town I lived in, and so I knew him, just as a neighbor. Not that we were good friends or anything, but just as a neighbor. And so I think that's where find good mentors, because again, like the information that Ryan was talking about, listening and learning. If you have good mentors, that really helps you understand the bigger part of the business, right, and how to navigate it. And then I was lucky enough that the person who hired me at Yale New Haven Health was the same way when I first started there, right? She was she appreciated, I guess, my work ethic and the long hours, as others have mentioned here, and the hard work. And that was paid back in spades in the information and the mentoring I got for that person. So it all pays off. It really does. Good bosses and good mentors pay attention to that, and that's how you can get ahead. Really, I would say in organizations that are put together well, and but I think having those mentors is really important. So.
Yeah, and Keith, one of the things I think that we'd agree on, right, is that your mentors, and Kevin, I did the AHRMM mentor mentee program, and I was right. I had a mentor, and it was fantastic. So if you guys have the ability to do that, definitely do that. But I think one of the things that having someone who is your, if it's not an official mentor, but if it's someone that kind of you look up to, you understand that they're experienced, they know their stuff, they understand kind of your potential. I think that's the piece, right? Is being aware of someone's potential, right, and them making you feel confident, which is what someone as a good leader does, right? And what they do is like when you are with them and you guys walk into the room together and they introduce you not as like, oh, this is just an analyst over here, right? Like they would be introducing me like, this is my guy. This is my analyst. He knows what he's talking about. Like you guys need to work with him and kind of, you know, introduce you as like as their guy. I think for me, I had two leaders who were like that, and like they carried their words carried weight and meaning. And when they would say that, you could see like a change in like how other people would treat me, right? And so they say like, no, this is my guy. He's my analyst. He knows what he's doing. If you guys need anything, this is the guy you go to, right? And so those sorts of relationships and having people that believe in you, that give you the opportunity and trust you, and what that does for you as the person, like it gives you that confidence, but it also means that, you know, you try that much more harder. You try harder. You work that more. You work harder because you don't want to let that person down, because they have faith in you and you don't want to let them down. So those are one of the things, or a couple of the things that I've seen.
And can I add a point to that? Is that, you know, I was lucky enough to have informal mentors, right? Like you said, not a mentor program. But on top of that, I think it's almost harder now because people are working remotely, right? So to build those relationships with people who are leaders in your organization, I think is a little more difficult. I think we're losing something. We gained by working. I think people have gained by working remotely, right? You're home, you're working from your home, and you don't have that long drive in the morning to work, and there's things like that where we gain on that side. But on the other side, I think you lose something in the communication and the conversation and the day-to-day interactions with the people that you work with, especially your leaders and your mentors.
Great.
The only thing I'll add is bringing it back to the basics. I was influenced quite a bit by my mom and dad. You know, my dad worked 3 jobs and had perfect attendance when he retired after 25 years stint of perfect attendance. So I came from that type of a background. So I started with that. And then I'm going to say I was very honored and lucky that when I went over to Putnam Hospital over in New York, I had an excellent boss who took me under his wing and really coached me and mentored me. But I think that you gain that opportunity to do that. And I'd like to put this out there for the audience by showing that interest and being open to that, right? Because I had the, you know, like the privilege and the honor of having that, which helped me tremendously with my years there, made me stronger. But I've been able to really do the same just about in any position that I've had moving forward. I think that if you work very closely and really see, like what Keith said, that, you know, I say it's my job to make my boss look good, and you really develop that relationship, and you really see that as your priority. I think we can turn any boss, not any boss, but because there is one that I probably didn't get good mentoring from, but we can just about turn any boss into a coach, a supporter, and someone that can really help us make the right decisions or guide us properly. So I was very lucky, like I said, in my years at Putnam Hospital with that, but I also can't lose sight, and I wouldn't do justice without mentioning the ethics and the value that my mom and dad brought into our family.
So Rosa, you speak on ethics and, you know, the value of hard work and being on time and showing up every day. How does that translate into your leadership style? Those basic lessons that you learned early on in life.
Well, you know, I'm not going to lie. When I first came to Jackson, someone asked me if I came from the Army, which I did not, obviously. But I think that what it means is that I do have a lot of respect for our employees, because I do believe that everybody gets out of bed and wants to do an excellent job and wants to bring value to any organization. So it starts really from the beginning, right? And believing in that employee and understanding that they want to do good work and supporting them and coaching them. But I think it's critical that we measure our success based on the success that we've been able to give to others. And since I've had the opportunity where, other bosses made me successful, or allowed me to become successful, I really carry that attitude and that demeanor to try to do that with my team as much as possible. And that's really what I believe that leadership is all about. It's not about, how successful we are. It's about the success that we can create around us and let them grow and become true followers.
That's awesome. And Ryan, having worked with you a little bit and listening to some of the things Rosa said, how do you motivate and inspire your team? And I pick on you because Ryan was a really well-liked guy when we worked together at CTCA for all the right reasons. So,
Thanks, Skip. I think motivating the team, it's aligning on our mission, right? And I think and not just the organization's mission, but your mission, that drives you every day, right? Whether it's a faith-based mission or there's some other kind of driver in your life. So I think in terms of motivating a team, motivating my team, I want to be able to tap into that and kind of get our teams aligned on that mission, and then being able to really have them in the positions that they want to be in, right? It's like our materials managers or our materials handlers, right? Those folks in those roles, they need to love being in those roles. Like our category managers, they need to love going and sitting at the table and negotiating contracts, right? I think for me, getting the best out of my teams, is again, like Rosa said, it's our success is measured on the success of our teams. That's key. They need to feel successful in what they do on a daily basis, and they need to love what they do. And those are the pieces that I think we need to be able to tap into, and I guess that's where I see it.
it's really good, really good. And Keith, transitioning questions, how would you describe executive presence, right? When you walk into a room with other executives or the C-suite, what's the difference between, someone who's a category manager walking to that room and not having that experience, or someone who's, more tenured and has the confidence and ability to walk in there? How do you see that resonate throughout, I guess, for your team and also with your peers?
I think that, so executive presence to me is the ability to inspire confidence within your team, right? And so I think that comes from both sides, right? It comes from the leader as, you're confident, you provide professionalism, you communicate well to your team, you believe in the team. And I'm a big believer in team. I'm not a big believer in individual, right? We all are good individuals. We have to work hard. We respect the individual, but you have to also respect the team, right? If you take somebody like Vince Lombardi was known for building teams, right? He wasn't known for throwing the football. So I think we all have to realize that teamwork is key to getting something done. But as a leader, you have to inspire that confidence so people will take things on, work as a team, and not just be an individual. Individual contributors are really important. You have to do that work, but remember that you have teammates that you're working with and stick with them. I know I'm going outside of this executive presence a little and going into teamwork more, but I think it's important that your executives have to see you as a team, and the teams have to see that leader as the executive. And, I think inspiring confidence in that team is what allows you to get ahead.
Rosa, or you're good?
Sure. I'm going to start with the basics. Executive presence to me means that I have to be a role model at all times. I have to show that I'm vulnerable but brave. Like Keith said, I have to build the confidence of my team and make sure that they understand I have their back, if you will. I joke around many times and I tell my, everyone's busy, right? And I tell my team, we're not busy, we're not flustered, we're not overwhelmed or frantic about anything. We're just in demand. We're needed. We're in demand, So it's that type of an attitude. But think about that, right? You're not frantic, you're not busy, you're not overwhelmed, you're in demand. And that's a great thing, right? So you turn it positive. But you want to be calm, even keeled and composed at all times, I guess, right? One of the key things is to be well prepared with anything that comes your way, and be, as was discussed before, I think you can't have the executive presence without having excellent listening skills, as was discussed before. I think that's key because we have to be an excellent listener to earn others' confidence and let them believe that when they're speaking, they are our priority, and it's the most we want. We want to hear them, and we want to support them in any way possible. But I have to, close by saying something very simple, and I do think that, as simple as it is, I'm a mom of 3, and I have 4 grandchildren, so I get away with saying these things these days. But I think executive presence also comes with not only being the role model and building that confidence in our team, but I think appearance is also key. And what I mean by that, I've always been, like I said, I coach my kids and coach others, and to really coach them with their work and their career potential. I think that you should always dress for the job that you want. It's very difficult these days, as you don't want to be a fashion model and make your appearance be something that stands out, but be appropriate and consistent and level-headed so that people see you as an executive. So it's the confidence, the listening, the teamwork, being brave and getting the job done and having your team's back. But it also requires some basic things, and your appearance should not be a distraction if you want to have effective executive presence in all your encounters.
That's great. That's great. Transitioning a little bit, when you guys are hiring, what are the qualities you look for in an employee?
I can start. I tell my team sometimes that we can teach procurement. We can teach people how to be material handlers, receiving dock employees, print shop employees, capital asset employees, whatever the case is. We can teach supply chain functions, but we can't teach integrity, emotional intelligence, even communication skills at times. And if I'd rather hire somebody that has the right attitude, demeanor, values, and ethics, and the proper, critical thinking skills and all that, rather than have somebody that's very powerful when it comes on paper with all kinds of degrees and credentials and lacks those items. So again, I put a lot of focus on that emotional intelligence and the attitude and the demeanor. What we refer to at Jackson as care values, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think from where I sit, Rosa hit the nail on the head, right? It's why the education is very, very important. Without those other skills, that education may get you in the door, but it won't keep you in the door, right?
Exactly.
So I think, so I don't have to repeat the other things he just said. I agree with him 1,000%. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Kevin, as well, like, you've got to, like, for me, it's also looking at how excited they are to get the job, right? Like, we've seen, I'm sure Keith and Rosa I know I've kind of gotten some folks from our recruiters that have, sent some folks my way, And when you're interviewing them, right, it's like they're just checking the box. Oh yeah, I'm just going through here, a great resume and all this kind of thing. But many times it's just like, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten it, but you're on the phone with them. It's like it's just like just checking the box. Like, okay, so I've got this I've got the next interview, right? It's like, no, you've got to have that excitement about the job, and you can hear it and you can see it. And that's, to Keith's point, I think the in-person interview still has, still plays a key role in today's hiring decisions. You can do many interviews over video or WebEx, but like you get to a better decision some days of when you're sitting across the table from someone, and you can kind of get that energy from them, and you can sense that they want to be here and they want to do this job and they want to be part of your organization and be involved in the mission. So I think that's a couple of things as well, just to add to their points.
Yeah, that was great. On the other side, this could be an interesting one. Is there a particular trait or behavior that you have observed holding young professionals back in their career? And as millennials, we all think we're perfect, but we're really not. And we feel we should be in your shoes. So, is there anything you guys see that really stands out, a common trait or a particular, maybe instance that you notice?
Yeah, and I guess it kind of hits to what Ryan was saying also, as far as, you want the positive energy and that person that really, really wants the job. But this is what I consider a courageous conversation in today's environment, especially, with the young professionals. I find that many times there's a feeling of entitlement. Um, you may, they feel because they have the degree and this and that they're entitled to the job, and they're already qualified for the job, and that they are your best choice. I mean, I have these conversations again. I'm, with my own kids, right? I have a 26-year-old, 32, 33, whatever the case is, my daughters. But I always believe that you're not entitled to anything. You have to earn your stripes, right? So you can come into an organization and, sometimes we have people that come into an organization, work 6 or 7 months, and they expect to be promoted to the next position. That's great. And I would love to be able to do that all the time. But I think that's the one behavior that people need to think about, is really investing a little bit more, learning from others, earning your stripes, if you will, and letting that feeling of entitlement go away.
Yeah, and I would say as part of that, to add to that, is that, you in 6 or 7 months, sometimes you don't learn enough to get the next role, right? You don't have the experience for the next role. And there's a lot to be said for learning the whole job, right? Because to be a leader, you want to be able to understand all of the jobs below you. Even if you didn't do them all, you need to be able to understand them. So to try and move up that ladder without good experience and good information, and back to our listening, right, and all of that, I'm not saying you're going to fail as a leader, but you're going to be missing something as a leader, right? And so I think there is nothing better than experience. And so I would say stick to it, on the role you have, learn it. Yes, try and do the role above you that you want to be at, because, all of a sudden your boss will say, wow, that person is really doing their job, plus they're trying to do the next one. But, don't try and go 90 miles an hour, because I think that'll hurt you more in the end.
Yeah, and both great points. And I also would add that what we're seeing now is this hopping from job to job, or organization to organization. And like, it's great that that folks have been able to experience other organizations and add to their resume, but we still, I mean, you still see it as, you know, like, well, you weren't there very long, but now you're wanting this role in an elevated position, and like, what experience have you been able to get from that? And you were only there 6 or 7 months, so you know, right? And so I think be patient, and like become the expert in be the best in that position that you can be, and really kind of learn everything, like, right? Not only those guys who are above you, but you're, you know, if it's in a different department, like, understand a peer in a different department, what do they have to go through as well? Are there any similarities or differences of what they do to what you do? But I think there's kind of that, like, you know, maybe an entitlement, or like, we know everything. And like, the one thing that I learned early on is that no one owes you anything. No one owes you anything. You really have to like just earn where you are, and how you get to where you are.
Yeah, this is really great dialogue. In lieu of time, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to turn it over to the audience and see if they have any questions. But being in your roles, what, you know, and you talked about this earlier on in the dialogue, what certifications or educational requirements do you think supply chain leaders should have? And then also, how important, you know, kind of a dual fold question, how important is this to stay up to date with professional organizations and colleagues to keep aware of what's going on outside of your provider?
Oh, I would say yes, you know, get the education, and the specific education for supply chain is really important. But I would also, the organizations like ARM and others, join those organizations so you can network, right? Networking is going to help you in your career as you move forward, right? You're going to meet with other people, learn from other people, create great relationships that you may have for life. And so understand your peers throughout the nation and throughout other organizations. So I think the education and the networking together is something that I would suggest everybody does.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I would just add that I do think that to be a senior executive in supply chain, strategic sourcing, you do obviously should have your master's degree. And I do think that education is critical. You've heard me say before on a few of these questions that I believe strongly in professional development. But I think certifications are extremely important. They did give you an opportunity to just put out there your expertise and differentiate yourself in the competitive workplace against others that maybe don't have it. You know, everybody goes and gets their bachelor's or master's degree, get those certifications that are available in the market. Even if you know, people say, well, you know, I want my employer to pay for it and this and that. Invest in yourself. Go out and get those certifications yourself. It's your investment, and you carry that notch in your belt anywhere you go. I got my CMRP very, very early in my career. It's the best thing I ever did. You obviously maintain it thereafter. But I really, really recommend that people do it. There's obviously many other certifications that you can get depending on your work environment and your organization, things that you may need. But I do think that a master's degree is important for, you know, the high level chief supply chain officer, chief procurement officer, as well as certifications to just specialize yourself. And you know, it also, when someone gets their certification, you also know that they're doing something on a regular basis to recertify. So they're going out and getting additional education. So they're not in a rut, they're not in a silo, they're going out and maintaining it. So that's why I believe so strongly in the certifications.
Yeah, agree with what they said, Kevin.
Awesome.
I would just add one more point. Is something you said about your resume, and about, you know, what we look for when we are hiring someone, right? getting those certificates, getting that education shows that you are invested in making yourself better, right? And that you are putting in the work, you are putting in the effort. And some people to start may come with a bachelor's degree that is in the arts and not in business, right? But that's okay. You put in the effort to get it. And then as you get in your career, if you did start in supply chain and you start getting there, then I agree with what everybody else said, is that go after those. But I think it's really important that so if I'm looking at resume and somebody's got, the first cut before I even talk to anybody, right? You look for those things, right? We all look for education, we look for certifications, we look for what you've done in the past, right? Did you work through college? Did you work through this? Did you do that? So it's the big package, right? It's not just, we said don't just check boxes, but checking some of those boxes is important along the way as well as everything else. So
It's great. We've covered a lot of what's come through in the chat, so I'll just ask one more question to wrap us up, and then we'll end. As you progress in your career, how important is it to stay true to who you really are, right? From beginning to end, not losing yourself and really being, as they say, your authentic self. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can try and start that one off. I think Kevin, it's like we said earlier, or like I said early on, it's like about being humble, living kind of your mission, staying true to yourself, being part of the team. Obviously, kind of makes it that's what keeps you having a sense of humor as well. I think that's like being able to at least have a laugh and sit down with your team and have lunch and have just not always talk about work and be interested in kind of what's going on in their life and be genuine about it, right? Not just ask the question and not really care what's going on in their life, but actually like be interested, be genuine, be sincere. I think that's for me that's who I am as well in terms of when I'm not at work, right? And just being able to really connecting with your team and making sure that they know that you actually you are interested and you do care, and there are things that are part of you that you can't separate from work and everyday life all the time. So
yeah, I would say, I try to be humble. I try to be honest. I try to be respectful to my team. I try to ask them those questions because I genuinely want to know, because I'm a big family guy. If you talk to my team, I'm always talking about my family, my grandkids, and things like that, right? So I think all of that is real, right? And I would say another thing, be honest and don't be afraid to fall on your sword, right? If you made a mistake, you made a mistake, right? And that's okay. I'd rather have the honesty and know that somebody is, really trying hard and they made a mistake, right? That's okay. We all learn from our mistakes. And I know sometimes that's scary, especially if you're in a new organization, but good leaders will see that and respect that. So I would say I like the way you said it, Kevin. Be true to yourself. So
Yeah, and the only thing I agree with what Ryan has said and Keith. I try to do a self-check for myself. I believe I'm a servant leadership style, but when I just say I try to do a self-check, I want to make sure that I stay in that style to be able to bring the value to the employees so that they enjoy coming to work. We all have difficult jobs, but that they feel good about coming to work. And we have to show that we're compassionate, respectful, and that we're there to guide them and help them earn all the support and commitment that they need. But I think the servant leadership style is something that we all need to really take a close look at and try to bring more of into our industry, really just to develop the respect and be kind, because we, like Keith said, we're all going to fail at some point. We have to be honest and say we made a mistake and let's move on. Let's not focus on the individual. Let's move on and get the team success back on track. So I think that's what really builds the loyalty, but we need that servant leadership style and more of it.
That's awesome. Well, Rosa, Keith, and Ryan, thank you very much for joining in our discussion series today. I mean, I thought you guys did a great job. It was really interesting. I learned a lot, diverse perspectives. I really was blown away with your guys' insight and comments. We greatly appreciate what you have shared with us. And I personally thank you for taking times out of your busy schedule to do this. I know we had almost about 100 attendees and we got some great feedback. And also, thank you everyone for participating today in the audience. If you have any additional questions, please email arm@aha.org. And please let us know what you think of the session by completing the survey, which will pop up as an external site after the session. I hope you will join us for our next discussion session next quarter. See you then and have a great day. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.